In the quiet of the evening, where shadows softly play, a fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away, with a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams. He waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. He picks up a book, the pages worn and wise, every line a whisper under the vast skies, from far off land.
I don't see anything saying my microphone shouldn't be on. That's weird. Okay, I wonder why it just showed up. That's strange. Anyway, I hope you've had a great week. Probably glad that it's ending soon. Because Friday nights are definitely a good night. I don't know why my sound was off. That's... At least my sound alerts are working. Okay, well, those are working. Okay. I wonder why it would be the mic. Yeah, they really did do a nice series of book covers when they were doing these. I think this book cover is from the 1932 edition. My CPU is not acting up today. Okay. How many stories do I have left in this book? Yeah, there are only 7 stories left in this book. Might finish it tonight. Then I think I'll have to go to the Crimson Fairy book. I think that's the one after this. I would have to double check. But anyway, it is almost 9:10, so, well, 9:10 my time anyway. So it's almost time to get into the stories. We will get into the stories, so get comfortable, settle back, relax, Listen to the melodious sounds of my voice. Here's our first story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. The Frog. Once upon a time there was a woman who had 3 sons. Though they were peasants, they were well off, for the soil on which they lived was fruitful and yielded rich crops. One day, they all 3 were told their mother that they meant to get married, to which their mother replied, "Do as you like, but see that you choose good housewives who will look carefully after your affairs, and to make certain of this, take with you these 3 skeins of flax and give it to them to spin. Whoever spins the best will be my favorite daughter-in-law." Now, the 2 eldest sons had already chosen their wives, so they took the flax from their mother and carried it off with them, to have it spun, as she had said. But the youngest son was puzzled for what to do with his skein, as he knew no girl, never having spoken to any, to whom to give it to be spun. He wandered hither and thither, and asking the girls that he met if they would undertake the task for him. But at the sight of the flax they laughed in his face and mocked him. Then, in his despair, he left their villages and went into the country, and, seating himself on the bank of a pond, he began to cry bitterly. Suddenly, there was this noise close beside him, and a frog jumped out of the water on the bank and asked him why he was crying. The youth told her of his trouble, and how his brothers would bring home linen spun for them by their promised wives, but that no one would spin his thread. Then the frog answered, "Do not weep on that account. Give me the thread, and I will spin it for you." And, having said this, she took it out of his hand and hopped back into the water. And the youth went back, not knowing what would happen next. In a short time, the 2 elder brothers came home, and their mother asked to see their linen that had been woven out of the skeins of flax she had given them. They all 3 left the room, and in a few minutes the 2 eldest returned, bringing with them the linen that had been spun by their chosen wives. But the youngest brother was greatly troubled, for he had nothing to show for the skein of flax that he had been given. Sadly, he betook himself to the pond, and sitting down on the bank, once more began to weep. Flop! And the frog appeared out of the waters close beside him. "Take this," she said. "There is linen that I have spun for you." Oh, you may imagine how delighted the youth was. She put the linen in his hands, and he took it straight back to his mother, who was so pleased that she declared she had never seen linen so beautifully spun, and that it was far finer and whiter than the webs that the 2 elder brothers had brought home. Then she turned to her sons and said, "But this is not enough. My sons, I must have another proof of what sort of wives you have chosen. In the house there are 3 puppies. Each of you take one and give it to the woman who you mean to bring home as your wife. She must train it and bring it up. Whichever dog turns out the best, its mistress will be my favorite daughter-in-law." So the young men set out on their different ways, each taking a puppy with them. The youngest, again not knowing where to go, returned to the pond, and sat down once more on the bank, and began to weep. Flop! And close beside him he saw the frog. "Why are you weeping?" she said. Then he told her his difficulty, and that he did not know to whom he should take the puppy. "Give it to me," she said, "and I will bring it up for you." And seeing that the youth hesitated, she took the little creature out of his arms and disappeared with it into the pond. Poor puppy. The weeks and months passed, till one day the mother said she would like to see how the dogs had been trained by her future daughters-in-law. The two eldest sons departed and returned shortly, leading with them two great mastiffs, who growled so fiercely and looked so savage that the mere sight of them made the mother tremble with fear. The youngest son, as was now his custom, went to the pond and called on the frog to come to his rescue. In a minute she was at his side, bringing with her the most lovely little dog, which he put into his arms. It sat up and begged with its paws and went through the prettiest tricks, and almost human in the way it understood and did what it was told. In high spirits the youth carried it off to his mother. As soon as she saw it, she exclaimed, "This is the most beautiful little dog I have ever seen. You are indeed fortunate, my son. You have got a pearl of a wife." Then, turning to the others, she said, "Here are 3 shirts. Take them to your chosen wives. Whoever sews the best will be my favorite daughter-in-law." So the young men set out once more, and again this time the frog was much better and clearly the neatest. This time the mother said, "Now that I'm content with the test I gave, I want you to go and fetch home your brides, and I will prepare a wedding feast." You may imagine what the youngest brother felt on hearing these words. Whence was he to fetch a bride? Would the frog be able to help him with this new difficulty? With a bowed head and feeling very sad, he sat down on the edge of the pond. Flop! And once more the faithful frog was beside him. "What is troubling you so much?" she asked him, and then the youth told her everything. "Will you take me for a wife?" she asked. "What should I do with you as a wife?" he replied, wondering at her strange proposal. "Once more, will you have me or will you not?" she said. "I will neither have you nor will I refuse you," he said. At this, the frog disappeared, and the next minute the youth beheld a lovely little chariot, drawn by 2 tiny ponies sitting on the road. The frog was holding the carriage door open for him to step in. "Come with me," she said, and he got up and followed her into the chariot. As they drove along the road, they met 3 witches. The first by which was blind, the second was hunchbacked, and the third had a large thorn in her throat. When the 3 witches beheld the chariots with the frog seated pompously upon the cushions, they broke into such fits of laughter that the eyelids of the blind one burst open, and she recovered her sight. The hunchback rolled about on the ground in laughter until her back became straight. And the roar of laughter, the thorn fell out of the throat of the third witch. The first thought was to return the frog, who had unconsciously been the means of curing them of their misfortunes. The first witch waved her magic wand over the frog, and changed her into the loveliest girl that had ever been seen. The second witch waved the wand over the tiny chariot and ponies, and they were turned into a beautiful, large carriage with prancing horses, and a coachman on the seat. The third witch gave the girl a magic purse, filled with money, and having done this, the witches disappeared, and the youth with his lovely bride drove to his mother's home. Great was the delight of the mother at her youngest son's good fortune. A beautiful house was built for them. She was the favorite daughter-in-law, and everything well with them. And they lived happily ever after. So, Frog Princess. Guys are a lot nicer to frogs than the princess was to the frog who was a prince. Anyway, our second story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. The Princess Who Was Hidden Underground. Once there was a king who had great riches, which, when he died, he divided among his 3 sons. The 2 eldest of these lived in rioting and feasting, and thus wasted and squandered their father's wealth till nothing remained, and they found themselves in want and misery. The youngest of the 3 sons, on the contrary, made good use of his portion. He married a wife, and soon they had a most beautiful daughter, for whom, when she was grown up, he caused a great palace to be built underground, and then killed the architect who had built it. Next he shut up his daughter inside, and then sent heralds all over the world to make it known that he who should find the king's daughter should have her to wife. If he were not capable of finding her, then he must die. Many young men sought to discover her, but all perished at the attempt. After many had met their death, thus, there came a young man, beautiful to behold, and as clever as he was beautiful, who had a great desire to attempt the enterprise. First he went to a herdsman and begged him to hide him in a sheepskin, which had a golden fleece, and in this disguise to take him to the king. The shepherd let himself be persuaded to do so, and took his skin after shaving a golden fleece, sewed the young man into it, and putting also food and drink, and so brought him before the king. When the latter saw the golden lamb, he asked and he heard, "Will you sell me this lamb?" But the herd answered, "Oh, no, king, I will not sell it, but if you find pleasure therein, I am willing to oblige you, and I will lend it to you, free of charge, for 3 days. And after that, you must give it back to me." This the king agreed to, and he arose and took the lamb to his daughter. When he had led it into her palace, and through many rooms, he came to a shut door. Then he called, "Open, Sartara Martara of the earth!" And the door opened of itself. After that they went through many more rooms, and came to another closed door. Again the king called out, "Open, Sartara Martara of the earth!" And the door opened like the other. Then they came into the apartment where the princess dwelt, the floor, walls, and roof of which were all silver. When the king had embraced the princess, he gave her the lamb, to her great joy. She stroked it and caressed it and played with it. After a while, the lamb got loose, which, when the princess saw this, she said, "See, father, the lamb is free." But the king answered, "It is only a lamb. Why should it not be free?" And then he left the lamb with the princess and went on his way. In the night, however, the young man threw off the skin, and when the princess saw how beautiful he was, she fell in love with him, and asked him, "Why did you come here disguised in the sheepskin like that?" Then he answered, "When I saw how many people sought you and could not find you, and lost their lives in doing so, I invented this trick, and so I'm come safely to see you. And the princess exclaimed, You have done well so to do, but you must know that the wager is not yet won. For my father will change me and my maids into ducks and will ask you, Which of these ducks is the princess? Then I will turn my head back, and with my bill will clean my wings, so that you'll know me. When they spent 3 days together, chatting and caressing one another, the herd came back to the king and demanded his lamb. Then the king went to his daughter to bring it away, which troubled the princess very much, for she said that they had played so nicely together. But the king said, I cannot leave it with you, my daughter, for it is only lent to me. And so he took it away with him and gave it back to the shepherd. Then the young man threw the skin from him and went to the king, saying, Sire, I am persuaded to find your daughter. When the king saw how handsome he was, he said, My lad, I have pity on your youth. The enterprise has already cost the lives of many and will certainly be your death as well. But the youth answered, I accept your conditions, O king. I will either find her or lose my head. Thereupon he went before the king, who followed after him, till they came to the great door. And the young man said to the king, Speak the words that it may open. And the king answered, What are the words? I shall say something like, Shut, shut, shut? No, he said, say, Open Sartar Matar of the world. And when the king so said, the door opened itself, and they went in, while the king gnawed his mustache in anger. Then they came to the second door, where the same thing happened as the first, and they went in, and found the princess. Then the king said, Well, truly you have found the princess. Now I will turn her, as well as her maidens, into ducks, and if you can guess which of these ducks is my daughter, then you shall have her to wife. And immediately the king changed all the maidens into ducks, and he drove them before the young man, and said, Now, show me which is my daughter. Then the princess, according to their understanding, began to clean her wings with her bill, and the lad said, She who cleans her wings is a princess. Now the king could do nothing more but give her to the young man to wife, and they lived together in great joy and happiness. Good so far. So far, it's a princess that's having to be found. So, our third story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. The Girl Who Pretended to Be a Boy. Once upon a time there lived an emperor who was a great conqueror and reigned over more countries than anyone in the world. And whenever he subdued a fresh kingdom, he only granted peace on the condition that the king should deliver one of his sons for 10 years' service. Now on the border of his kingdom lay a country whose emperor was as brave as his neighbor, and as long as he was young, he was victor in every war. But as years passed away, his head grew weary of making plans of campaign, and his people wanted to stay home and tend their fields, and at last he too felt that he must do homage to the other emperor. One thing, however, held him back from this step, which day by day he saw more clearly was only one possible. His new overlord would demand the service of one of his sons, and the old emperor had no sons, only 3 daughters. Look on which side he would, nothing but ruin seemed to lie before him, and he became so gloomy that his daughters were frightened, and they did everything they could think of to cheer him up, but all to no purpose. At length one day, when they were at dinner, the eldest of the 3 summoned up all her courage and said to her father, "What secret grief is troubling you? Are your subjects discontented, or have we given you some cause for displeasure? To soothe away your wrinkles, we would gladly shed our blood, for our lives are bound up in yours, and this you know." "My daughter," answered the emperor, "what you say is true. Never have you given me one moment's pain. Yet now you cannot help me. Why was not one of you a boy?" I don't understand," she answered in surprise. "Tell us what is wrong, and though we are not boys, we are not quite useless." "But what can you do, my dear children? Spin, sew, and weave, that is all you're learning. Only a warrior can deliver me now, a young giant who is strong to wield a battle-axe, whose sword deals deathly blows." "But why do you need a son so much at present? Tell us about it. It will not make matters worse if we know." "Oh, listen then, my daughters, and learn the reason of my sorrow. You have heard that as long as I was young, no man ever brought an army against me without it costing him dearly. But the years have chilled my blood and drunk my strength. And now the deer can roam in the forest, and my arrows will never pierce its heart. Strange soldiers will set fire to my houses and water their horses at my wells, and my arm cannot hinder them. No, my day is past, and the time has come when I, too, must bow my head under the yoke of my foe. But who is to give him the 10 years' service that is part of the price which the vanquished must pay?" "I will!" cried the eldest girl, springing to her feet, but her father only shook his head sadly. "Never will I bring shame upon you," urged the girl. "Let me go. I am not a princess. I am a daughter of an emperor." "Go then," he said. The brave girl's heart almost stopped beating from joy as she set about her preparations. She was not still for a single moment, but danced about the house, turning chests and wardrobes upside down. She set aside enough things for a whole year: dresses embroidered with gold, and precious stones, and a great store of provisions. And she chose the most spirited horse in the stable, with eyes of flame and a coat of shining silver. When her father saw her mounted and curveting at the court, he gave her much wise advice as to how she was to behave like a young man she appeared to be, and how to behave as a girl she really was. Then he gave his blessing and touched her horse with his spur. The silver armor of herself and her steed dazzled the eyes of the people as she darted past. As soon as she was out of sight, and if after a few miles she had not pulled up to allow the escort to join her, the rest of the journey would have been performed alone. But though none of his daughters were aware of the fact, the old emperor was a magician, and had laid his plans accordingly. He managed, unseen, to overtake his daughter and throw a bridge of copper over a stream which he would have to cross. Then, changing himself into a wolf, he lay down under the arches and waited. He had chosen his time well, and in about half an hour the sound of the horse's hoofs was heard. His feet were almost on the bridge when a big gray wolf with grinning teeth appeared before the princess. With a deep growl that froze the blood, he drew himself up and prepared to spring. The appearance of the wolf was so sudden and so unexpected that the girl was almost paralyzed, and never even dreamt of flight till the horse leapt violently to one side. Then she turned him around, and, urging him at his fullest speed, never drew rein until she saw the gates of the palace rising before her. The old emperor, who got back long since, came to the door to meet her, and touching her shining armor, he said, "Did I not tell you, child, that flies do not make honey?" The days passed on, and one morning the second princess implored her father to allow her to try the adventure on which her sister had made such a failure. He listened unwillingly, feeling so sure it was of no use, but she begged so hard that in the end he consented, and having chosen her arms, she rode away. But, though unlike her sister, she was quite prepared for the appearance of the wolf, when she reached the copper bridge, she showed no greater courage. She galloped home as fast as her horse could carry her, and on the steps of the castle her father was standing, and as still trembling from fright, she knelt at his feet, and he said gently, "Did I not tell you, my child, that not every bird is caught in a net?" The three girls stayed quietly in the palace for a little while, embroidering, spinning, and weaving, and tending their birds and their flowers. When early one morning the youngest princess entered the door of the emperor's private apartments. "Father, it is my turn now. Perhaps I shall get the better of the wolf." "What do you think? You are braver than your sisters, vain little one. You who have hardly your long clothes behind you." But she did not mind being laughed at, and answered, "For your sake, father, I would cut the devil himself into small bits, or even become a devil myself. I think I shall succeed, but if I fail, I shall come home without more shame than my sisters." The emperor still hesitated, but the girl petted and coaxed him until at last he said, Well, if you must go, you must. It remains to be seen what I shall get by it, except perhaps a good laugh when you come back with your head bent and your eyes on the ground." "He laughs best who laughs last," said the princess. Happy at having gotten her way, the princess decided that the first thing to be done was to find some old white-haired boyard whose advice she could trust, and then to be very careful in choosing her horse. So she went straight to the stables where the most beautiful horses in the empire were feeding in the stalls. But none seemed quite that she wanted. Almost in despair, she reached the last box of all, which was occupied by her father's ancient warhorse, old and worn like himself, stretched sadly out on the straw. The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she stood up gazing at him. The horse lifted his head and gave a little neigh, and then said softly, "You look gentle and pitiful, but I know it is of your love of your father which makes you tender to me. Ah, what a warrior he was, and good times we shared together. But now I am grown old, and the master has forgotten me. There is no reason to care whether my coat is dull or shining. Yet it is not late. If I were properly tended, in a week I could vie with any horses in the stable." "And how should you be tended?" asked the girl. "I must be rubbed down morning and evening with rainwater. My barley must be boiled in milk because of my bad teeth, and my feet must be washed in oil." "I should like to try the treatment, as you may help me in carrying out my scheme." Try it then, mistress, and I promise you will never repent. So, in a week's time, the horse woke up one morning with a sudden shiver through all his limbs, and when it had passed away, he found his skin shining like a mirror, his body was fat as a watermelon, and his movements light as a chamois. Then, looking at the princess, who had come early to the stable, he said joyously, "May success be on the step of my master's daughter, for she has given me back my life. Tell me what I can do for you, princess, and I will do it." "I want to go to the emperor, who is our beloved overlord, and I have no one to advise me, which all the white-headed boyards shall choose as a counselor." "If you have me, you have no one else in need. I serve you as I served your father, if you will only listen to what I say." "I will listen to everything. Can you start in 3 days?" "This moment, if you like," said the horse. The preparations of the emperor's youngest daughter were much fewer and simpler than those of her sisters. They consisted only of some boys' clothes, a small quantity of linen and food, and a little money in case of necessity. Then she bade farewell to her father and rode away. A day's journey from the palace, she reached the copper bridge, but before they caught sight of it, the horse, who was also a magician, had warned her of the means her father would try to prove her courage. Still, in spite of his warning, she trembled all over when the huge wolf, as thin as if he had fasted for a month, with claws like saws and a mouth as wide as an oven, bounded howling towards her. For a moment her heart failed her, but the next, touching the horse lightly with her spur, she drew her sword from its sheath, ready to separate the wolf's head from its body in a single blow. The beast saw the sword and shrank back, which was the best thing it could do, as now the girl's blood was up, and the light battle in her eyes. Then, without looking, she rode across the bridge. The emperor, proud of this first victory, took a shortcut and waited for her at another day's journey, close to a river over which he threw a bridge of silver. And this time it took the shape of a lion. But the horse guessed this new danger and told the princess how to escape it. But it was one thing to receive advice when we feel safe and comfortable, and quite another quite another to be able to carry it out when some awful peril is threatening us. And if the wolf made the girl quake with terror, she seemed like a lamb beside the dreadful lion. At the sound of his roar, the very trees quivered, and his claws were so large that each one of them looked like a cutlass. The breath of the princess came and went, and her feet rattled in her stirrups. Suddenly, the remembrance flashed across her of the wolf whom she had put to flight, and waving her sword, she rushed so violently on the lion that he had barely time to spring to one side, so as to avoid the blow. Then, like a flash, she crossed the bridge also. Now, during her whole life, the princess had been so carefully brought up that she never had left the gardens of her palace, and so that the sight of hills and valleys and tinkling streams and the song of larks and blackbirds made her almost beside herself with wonder and delight. She longed to get down and bathe her face in the clear pools and pick the brilliant flowers, but the horse said nay, and quickened his pace, neither turning to the right nor to the left. "Oh, warriors," he told her, "only rest when I've won the victory. You still have another battle to fight, and it is the hardest of all." This time, it was neither a wolf nor a lion that was waiting for it the day's journey, but a dragon with 12 heads and a golden bridge behind it. The princess rode up without seeing anything to frighten her, when suddenly a puff of smoke and flame came from beneath her feet, causing her to look down, and there was a horrible creature, twisted and writhing, with 12 heads reared up, as if to seize her between them. The bridle fell from her hand, and the sword which she had just grasped slipped back into its sheath. But the horse bade her to fear nothing, and with a mighty effort she sat upright and spurred straight on the dragon. The fight lasted an hour, and the dragon pressed her hard. But in the end, a well-directed side blow, she cut off one of the heads, and with a roar that seemed to rend the heavens in two, the dragon fell back on the ground and rose as a man before her. Although the horse had informed the princess the dragon was really her own father, the girl had hardly believed him, and stared in amazement at the transformation. But he flung his arms around her and pressed her to his heart, saying, "Now I see you are good as brave as the bravest and wise as the wisest. You have chosen the right horse, for without his help you would have returned with a bent head and downcast eyes. You have filled me with hope that you may carry out the tasks you have undertaken. But be careful to forget none of my counsels, and above all, to listen to those of your horse." When he had done speaking, the princess knelt down to receive his blessing, and they went their separate ways. The princess rode on and on, till at last she came to the mountains which held up the roof of the world. There she met 2 genii who had been fighting fiercely for 2 years, without one having gotten the best of the other. Seeing that they took to be a young man seeking adventures, one of the combatants called out, "Fat runners, deliver me from my enemy, and I will give you the horn that will be heard in the distance of 3 days' journey." And the other cried out, "Fat funners, help me conquer this pagan thief, and you shall have my horse Sunlight." But before answering, the princess consulted her own horse as to which offer she should accept, and he advised her to side with a genie who was a master of Sunlight, his own younger brother, and still more active than himself. So the girl at once attacked the other genie, and soon clove his skull. Then the one who was left victor begged her to come back with him to his house, and he would hand over Sunlight, as he had promised. The mother of the genies was rejoiced to see her son return safe and sound, and prepared her best room for the princess, who, after so much fatigue, needed rest badly. But the girl declared that she must first make her horse comfortable in the stable, but this was only an excuse, as she wanted to ask his advice on several other matters. But the old woman had surprised from the very first that the boy had come to the rescue of her son, was a girl in disguise, and told the genies that she was exactly the wife he needed. The genie scoffed and inquired what female hand could ever wield a saber like that, but, in spite of his sneers, his mother persisted, and as proof of what she had said, laid at night on each of their pillows a handful of magic flowers that fade at the touch of a man, but remain eternally fresh in the fingers of a woman. It was very clever of her, but unluckily the horse had warned the princess what to expect, and when the house was silent she stole very softly into the genie's room and exchanged his faded flowers for those she held. Then she crept back to her own bed and fell fast asleep. At the break of day, the old woman ran to see her son and found, as she would soon see, a bunch of dead flowers in his hands. And she passed on beside the bed of the princess, who lay asleep still grasping the withered flowers. But she did not believe any more than her guest was a man, and so she told her son. So they put their heads together and laid another trap for her. After breakfast, the genius gave his arm to his guest and asked her to come with him to the garden. For some time they walked about looking at flowers, and Genius all the while pressed her to pick any flowers she fancied. But the princess, suspecting a trap, inquired roughly why they were wasting precious hours in the garden when, as men, they should be on their stables looking after their horses. Then the genius told his mother that she was quite wrong, and his deliverer was certainly a man. But the old woman was not convinced for all that. She would try once more, she said, and her son must lead his visitor into the armory, where hung every kind of weapon used all over the world, some plain and bare, others ornamented with precious stones, and beg her to make a choice of one of them. The princess looked at them closely and felt the edges and points of their blades. Then she hung on her belt an old sword with a curved blade that would have done credit to an ancient warrior. After this, she informed the genies that she would start early next day and take sunlight with her. There was nothing more for the mother to do but to submit, though she still stuck to her own opinion. The princess mounted Sunlight and touched him with her spur, when the old horse, who was galloping alongside, suddenly said, "Up to this time, mistress, you have obeyed my counsels, and all has gone well. Listen to me once more, and do what I tell you. I am old. Now there is someone to take my place, I will confess it. I am afraid that my strength is not equal to the task that lies before me. Give me leave, therefore, to return home, and do you continue your journey under the care of my brother. Put your faith in him as you put it in me, and you will never repent it. Wisdom has come early to sunshine." "Yes, my old comrade, you have served me well, and it is through your help that I am now roundly victorious. So grieved though I am at your farewell, I will obey you at once, and will listen to your brother as I would yourself. Only, I must have a proof that he loves me as well as you do." "How should I not love you?" answered Sunlight. "How should I not be proud to serve a warrior such as you? Trust me, mistress, and you shall never regret the absence of my brother. I know there will be difficulties in our path, but we will face them together." Then, with tears in her eyes, the princess took leave of her old horse, who galloped back to her father. She had ridden only a few miles further when she saw a golden curl lying on the ground before her. Checking her horse, she asked whether it would be better to take it or to let it lie. "If you take it," said Sunlight, "you will repent, and if you don't, you will repent too. So, take it." On this, the girl dismounted and picked up the curl, and wound it around her neck for safety. They passed by hills, they passed by mountains, they passed through valleys, leaving behind them thick forests, and fields covered with flowers, and at length they reached the court of the Overlord. He was sitting on his throne, surrounded by the sons of the other emperors who served him as pages. These youths came forward to greet their new companion, and wondered why they felt so attracted to him. However, there was no time for talking and concealing her fright. The princess was led straight up to the throne and explained, in a low voice, her reason for coming. The emperor received her kindly and declared himself fortunate in finding a vassal so brave and charming, and begged the princess to remain in attendance on his person. She was, however, very careful in her behavior towards the other pages, whose way of life did not please her. One day, however, she had been amusing herself by making sweetmeats, when two of the young princes looked in to pay her a visit. She offered them some of the food which was already on the table, and they thought it was so delicious that they licked their fingers and would not lose a morsel. Of course, they did not keep the news of their discovery to themselves, but told all their companions that they had been enjoying the best supper they had ever had since they were born. From that moment, the princess was left no peace till she had promised to cook them all a dinner. Now, it happened that on the day fixed, all the cooks in the palace became intoxicated, and there was no one to make up the fire. When the pages heard of the shocking state of things, they went to their companion and implored her to come to the rescue. The princess was fond of cooking, and was, besides, very good-natured, so she put on an apron and went down to the kitchen without delay. When the dinner was placed before the emperor, he found it so nice that he ate much more than was really good for him. The next morning, as soon as he woke, he sent for his head cook and told him to send up the same dishes as before. The cook, seized with fright at this command, which he knew he could not fill, fell on his knees and confessed the truth. The emperor was so astonished that he forgot to scold, and while he was thinking over the matter, some of his pages came in and said that their new companion had been heard to boast that he knew where Lillian was to be found. The celebrated Lian of the song, which begins, "Golden hair, the fields are green." And that's to their certain knowledge he had a curl of her hair in his possession. When he heard that, the emperor desired the page to be brought before him, and as soon as the princess obeyed his summons, he said to her abruptly, "But, Fanas, you have hidden from me that you know the fact of the gold-haired Lian. Why did you do this? For I have treated you more kindly than my other pages." And then, after making the princess show him the golden curl which he wore around her neck, he added, "Listen to me. Unless by some means or other you bring me the owner of this lock, I will have your head cut off in the place where you stand. Now, go." In vain, the poor princess tried to explain how the lock of hair came into her possession. The emperor would not listen, and bowing low, she left his presence and went to consult Sunlight what she was to do. At first, his words seemed to brighten her. "Do not be afraid, mistress. Only last night my brother appeared to me in a dream and told me that the genies had carried off Leon, whose hair you picked up on the road. But Leon declares that before she marries her captor, he must bring her a present, a whole stud of mares which belong to her. The genius, half crazy in love, thinks of nothing night and day but how this can be done, and meanwhile she is quite safe in the island swamps of the sea. Go back to the emperor and ask him for 20 ships filled with precious merchandise. The rest you shall know by and by." On hearing this advice, the princess went at once to the emperor's presence. "May long life be yours, O sovereign almighty," she said. "I have come to tell you that I can do as you command if you give me 20 ships, and load them with the most precious wares in your kingdom." "You shall have all that I possess if you will bring me the golden-haired Lian," said the emperor. "The ships shall have." The ships were soon ready, and the princess entered the largest and finest, with Sunlight by her side. Then the sails were spread, and the voyage began. For 7 weeks the wind blew them straight towards the west, and early one morning they caught sight of the island swamps of the sea. They cast anchor in a little bay, and the princess made haste to disembark with Sunlight, but before leaving the ship, she tied to her belt a pair of tiny gold slippers, adorned with precious stones. Then, mounting Sunlight, she rode till she came to several palaces, built on hinges, so that they would always turn towards the sun. With the most splendid of these was guarded by 3 slaves whose greedy eyes were caught by the glistening gold of the slippers. They hastened up to the owner of these treasures and inquired who he was. A merchant, replied the princess, who has somehow missed his road and has lost himself in the island swamps of the sea. Not knowing if it was proper to receive him or not, the slaves returned to their mistress and told him all they had seen, but not before she had caught sight of the merchant from the roof of her palace. Luckily, her jailer was away, and always trying to catch some instead of mares, so for the moment she was free and alone. The slaves told her the tale of their so well that their mistress insisted on going down to the shore and seeing the beautiful slippers for herself. They were even lovelier than she expected, and when the merchant besought her to come on board, and inspect some that he thought were finer still, her curiosity was too great to refuse, and so she went. Once on board, she was so busy turning over all the precious things stored there that she never knew that the sails were spread, and that they were flying along with the wind behind them. And when she did know, she rejoiced in her heart, though she pretended to weep and lament at being carried captive for a second time. Thus they arrived in the court of the emperor. They were just about to land when the mother of the genies stood before them. She had learnt that Leanne had fled her prison in the company of a merchant, and as her son was absent, he had come herself to pursuit. Striding over the blue waters and hopping from wave to wave, one foot reaching to heaven and the other planted in the foam, she was close at their heels, and breathing flame and fire. When they stepped on shore of the ship, one glance told Ilian that the horrible old woman was, and she whispered hastily to a companion. Without saying a word, the princess swung onto Sunlight's saddle, and leaping up behind her, they were off like a flash. It was not until they drew near the town that the princess stopped and asked Sunlight what they should do. "Put your hand into my left ear," he said, "and take out a sharp stone, which you must throw behind you." The princess did as she was told, and a huge mountain sprang up behind them. The mother of genies began to climb up it, and though they galloped quickly, she was quicker still. They heard her coming faster and faster, and again the princess stooped and asked what was to be done next. "Put your hand into my right ear," said the horse, "and throw a brush you will find behind you." The princess did so, and a great forest sprang up behind them, and so thick were its leaves that even a wren could not fly through. But the old woman just seized a hold of the branches and flung herself like a monkey from one to the other, and always drew nearer, always, till their hair was singed by the flames of her mouth. Then, in despair, the princess bent down again and asked if there was nothing more to be done. And Sunlight replied, "Quick, quick, take off the betrothal ring on the finger of Leanne and throw it behind you." This time there sprang up a great tower of stone, smooth as ivory and hard as steel. It reached up into the heaven itself, and the mother of the genies gave a howl of rage, knowing that she could neither climb nor get through it. But she was not beaten yet, and gathering herself up, she made a prodigious leap and landed her way on top of the tower, right in the middle of Ilian's ring, which lay there, and held her tight. Only her claws could be seen, grasping at the battlements. All that could be done the old witch did, but the fire that poured out of her mouth never reached the fugitives, though it laid waste to the country 100 miles round the tower, like the flames of a volcano. Then, with one last effort to free herself, her hands gave way, and falling down to the bottom of the tower, and she was broken into pieces. When the flying princess saw what had happened, she rode back to the spot, and Sunlight counseled her, and placed her finger on top of the tower, which was so gradually shrinking into the earth that in an instant the tower had vanished as if it had never been. and in its place was a finger of the princess with a ring around it. The emperor received Ilian with the respect that was due to her, and fell in love with her at first sight besides. But this did not seem to please Ilian, whose face was sad as she walked towards the palace or gardens, wondering how it was, while other girls did as they liked. She was always in the power of someone whom she hated. So when the emperor asked her to share his throne, Elaine answered, "Noble sovereign, I may think of marriage till my stud of horses has been brought me, and their trappings all complete." When he heard this, the emperor once more sent for fet-runners and said, "Fet-runners, fetch me instantly a set of mares with their trappings all complete. If not, your head shall pay forfeit." "Mighty emperor, I kiss your hands. I have but just returned from doing your bidding, and behold, you sent me on another mission, and to stake my head on its fulfillment, when your court is full of valiant young men pining to win their spurs. They say you are just a man, then why entrust this quest to one of them? Where am I to seek these mares that I am to bring you?" "How do I know? They may be anywhere in heaven or earth, but wherever they are, you will have to find them." The princess bowed and went to consult Sunlight. He listened while she told the tale, and then said, "Fetch quickly 9 buffalo skins and smear them with tar, and lay them on my back. Do not fear, you will succeed in this also, but in the end the emperor's desires will be his undoing." The buffalo skins were soon got, and the princess started off with Sunlight. The way was long and difficult, but at length they reached the place where the mares were grazing. Here the genies who had carried off Ilian had wandered about, trying to discover how to capture them, all the while believing that Ilian, his wife, was safe in the palace where he had left her. As soon as she caught sight of him, the princess went up and told him that Ilian had escaped, and that his mother, in her efforts to recapture her, had died of rage. At this news, the blind fury took possession of the genie, and he rushed madly upon the princess, who awaited his onslaught with perfect calmness. As he came on, with his saber lifted high in the air, Sunlight bounded right over his head, so that the sword felt harmless. And when, in her turn, the princess were to strike, the horse sank upon his knees, so that the blade pierced the genie's thigh. The fight was so fierce that it seemed as if the earth would give way under them, and for 20 miles round the beasts of the forests fled their caves for shelter. At last, when her strength was almost gone, the genie lowered his sword for an instant. The princess saw her chance, and with one swoop of her arm, severed the enemy's head from his body. Still trembling from the long struggle, she turned away, and went to the meadow where the stud were feeding. By the advice of Sunlight, she took care not to let them see her, and climbed a thick tree where she could see and hear without being seen herself. When they neighed, the mares came galloping up, and eager to see the newcomer, all but one horse, who did not like strangers, and thought they were all very well as they were. As Sunlight stood his ground, very well pleased with the attention paid him, the silky creature suddenly advanced to his charge, and a bit so violently that he had not had 9 buffalo skins caught Sunlight's last moment would have come. When the fight was ended, the buffalo skins were in ribbons, and the beaten animal writhing in pain on the grass. Nothing now remained to be done but to drive the whole stud to the emperor's court. So the princess came down from the tree and mounted Sunlight, while the stud followed meekly after, the wounded horse bringing up the rear. On reaching the palace, she drove them into the yard, and went to inform the emperor of her arrival. The news was told at once to Ilian, who ran down directly and called them to her one side, each mare by its name. At the first sight of the wounded animal shook itself quickly, and in a moment its wounds were healed, and there was not even a mark on its glossy skin. By this time the emperor, on hearing where she was, joined her in the yard, and at her request ordered the mares to be milked, so that both he and she might buy them milk and keep young forever. But they would not suffer anyone to come near them, so the princess, of course, was commanded to perform this service also. At this, the heart of the girl swelled within her. The hardest tasks were always given to her, and long before the 2 years were up, she would be worn out and useless. But while these thoughts passed through her mind, a fearful rain fell, such that no man remembered, and rose till the mares were standing on their knees in the water. Then, as suddenly as it stopped, and behold, the water was ice, which held the animals firmly in its grasp. And the princess's heart grew light again, and she sat down gaily to melt them, as if she had done it every morning of her life. The love of the emperor for Ilion waxed greater and greater day by day, but she paid him no heed, and always had an excuse ready to put off the marriage. At length, when she had come to the end of everything she could think of, she said to him one day, "Grant me, sire, just one more request, and then I will really marry you, for you have waited patiently for me this long." "My beautiful dove," replied the emperor, "both I and all I possess are yours, so ask your will, and you shall have it."
"Give me then," she said, "a flask of the holy water that is kept in the little church beyond the river Jordan, and I will be your wife."
The emperor ordered fete runners to ride without delay to the river Jordan, and bring back, at whatever cost, the holy water for Ilion. "This, my mistress," said the knight, when she was saddling him, "is the last and most difficult of your tasks, but fear nothing, for the hour of the emperor has struck." So they started, and the horse, who was not a wizard for nothing, told the princess exactly where she was to look for the holy water. "It stands," he said, "on the altar of a little church guarded by a troop of nuns. They never sleep night or day, but every now and then a hermit comes to visit them, and from him they learn certain things that is needed for them to know. When this happens, only one of the nuns remains to guard at the time, and if we are lucky enough to hit upon this moment, we may get a hold of the vase at once. If not, we have to wait for the arrival of the hermit, however long it may be, for there is no other means by obtaining the water." Okay, we're going to have to go to ads because I am out of pauses. And this story was a lot longer than I thought it would be. So, see you in a bit. Okay. Well, we're back from the ads. Let's see if I can get the story finished. There are not supposed to be any ads in my background noise. And the sound thing literally says ad free. So, where we left off. They came in sight of the church beyond Jordan, and, to their great joy, beheld the hermit just arriving at the door. They could hear him calling the nuns around him, and saw them settle themselves under a tree, with the hermit in their midst, all but one, who remained on guard, as was their custom. The hermit had a great deal to say, and the day was very hot. So the nun, tired of sitting by herself, lay down right across the threshold and fell sound asleep. When Sunlight told the princess what she was to do, the girl stepped over the sleeping nun and crept like a cat along the dark aisle, feeling the wall with her fingers, lest she should fall over something and ruin it all by a noise. But she reached the altar in safety and found the vase of holy water standing on it. This she thrust into her dress, and went back to the same carriage she had come. With a bound she was in the saddle, and seizing the reins, bade Sunlight take her home as fast as his legs could carry him. The sound of the flying hoofs aroused the nun, who understood instantly that the precious treasure was stolen, and her shrieks were so loud and piercing that all the rest came flying to see what was the matter. The hermit followed at their heels, but seeing it was impossible to overtake the thief, he fell on his knees and called his most deadly curse down upon her head, praying that if the thief was a man, he might become a woman, and if she was a woman, that she might become a man. In either case, he thought the punishment would be severe. But punishments are things about which people don't always agree. When the princess suddenly felt that she was really a man she had pretended to be, she was delighted, and when the hermit had only been within reach, she would have thanked him from all her heart. By the time she reached the emperor's court, Fetfrunners looked a young man all over to the eyes of everyone, even to the mother of the genies, who would now have had her doubts set at rest. He drew the vase from his tunic and held it up to the emperor, saying, "Mighty sovereign, oh hail, I have finished this task also. I hope it is the last you have of me. Let another take his turn." "I am content, Fetfrunners," replied the emperor, "and when I am dead it is you who will sit upon my throne, for I have yet no son to come after me. But if one is given me, my dearest wish shall be accomplished, but then you shall be his right hand, and guide him with your counsels." But though the emperor was satisfied, Ilian was not. At which she determined to revenge herself on the emperor for the dangers which he had caused Fetfrunners to run. And as for the vase of holy water, she thought that, in common politeness, her suitor ought to have fetched it himself, which he could not have done without any risk at all. So she ordered the great bath to be filled with the milk of her mares, and begged the emperor to clothe himself in white robes, and enter the bath with her, an invitation he accepted with joy. Then, when both were standing in the milk, reaching for the necks, she sent for a horse which had fought Sunlight, and made a secret sign to the horse. The horse understood what he was to do, and from one nostril he breathed in fresh air over Ilian, and from the other He snorted a burning wind which shriveled up the emperor where he stood, leaving only a little heap of ashes. His strange death, which no one could explain, made a great sensation throughout the country, and the funeral his people gave him was the most splendid ever known. When it was over, Illian summoned Fetfrunners before, and addressed them thus.
Fetfrunners, it is you who have brought me and saved my life, and obeyed my wishes. It is you who gave me back my stud, and who killed my genius, and the old witch his mother. You who brought me the holy water, and you, and none other, shall be my husband.
Yes, I will marry you, said the young man, with a voice almost as soft as when he was a princess. But know that in our house it will be the cock who sings, and not the hen. So, I would say that is our trans fairy tale for Pride Month. Still a cool story. Anyway, our next story for this fabulous Friday night. The Story of Halfman. In a certain town there lived a judge who was married but had no children. One day he was standing lost in thought before his house when an old man passed by. "What is the matter, sir?" he said. "You look troubled." "Oh, leave me alone, my good man." "But what is it?" persisted the other. "Well, I am successful at my profession and a person of importance, but I care nothing for it at all, as I have no children." Then the old man said, "Here are 12 apples. If your wife eats them, she will have 12 sons." That's not how that works. The judge thanked him joyfully as he took the apples and went to seek his wife. "Eat these apples at once," he cried, "and you will have 12 sons." She sat down and ate 11 of them. Just as she was in the middle of the 12th, her sister came in and gave her the half that was left. The 11 sons came into the world, strong and handsome boys, but when the 12th was born, there was only half of him. By and by they all grew into men, and one day they told their father that it was not time for them to find wives. "I have a brother," he answered, "who lives away in the east, who has 12 daughters, and you may marry them." So the 12 sons saddled their horses and rode for 12 days, until they met an old woman. "Greeting to you, young men," she said. "We have waited long for you, your uncle and I. The girls have become women and are sought in marriage by many. I knew you would come one day, and I have kept them for you. Follow me into my house." And the 12 brothers followed her gladly, and their father's brother stood at the door and gave them meat and drink. But at night, when everyone was asleep, Halfman crept softly to his brothers and said to them, "Listen, all of you, this man is no uncle of ours, but an ogre." "Nonsense, of course he's our uncle," answered they. "Well, this very night you will see," said Halfman, and he did not go to bed, but he hid and watched for himself. Now, in a little while, he saw the wife of the ogre steal into the room on tiptoe and spread a red cloth over the brothers, and then go cover her daughters with a white cloth. After that, she lay down and was soon snoring loudly. When Halfman was quite sure she was sound asleep, he took the red cloth from his brothers and put it on the girls, and laid the white cloth over his brothers. Next he drew their scarlet caps from their heads and exchanged them for the veils the ogre's daughters were wearing. This was hardly done when he heard steps coming along the floor, so he hid himself quickly in the folds of a curtain. There was only half of him, after all. The ogress came slowly and gently along, stretching out her hands before her, so that she might not fall anything unawares, for she had only a tiny lantern slung at her waist, which did not give much light. When he reached the place where the sisters were lying, she stopped down and held a corner of the cloth up to the lantern. Yes, certainly it was red. There was to be no mistake. She passed her hands over all their heads and felt the caps that covered them. And when she was certain that the brothers lay sleeping before her, she began to kill them one by one. And Halfman whispered to his brothers, "Get up and run for your lives. The ogress is killing her daughters." The brothers needed no second bidding, and in a moment they were out of the house. By this time the ogress had slain all her daughters but one, who awoke suddenly and saw what was happening. "Mother, what are you doing?" she cried. "Do you know that you have killed my sisters?"
"Oh, woe is me!" wailed the ogress. "Halfman has outwitted me after all."
And she turned to wreak vengeance against him, but he and his brothers were already far away. They rode all day till they got to the town where the real uncle lived, and inquired the way to his house. "Why have you been so long in coming?" he said, when they found him. "Oh, dear uncle, we were not nearly coming at all," replied they. "We fell in with an ogress who took us home and would have killed us if it had not been for Halfman. He knew what was in her mind and saved us, and here we are. Now, give us each a daughter to wife, and let us return home where we came." "Take them," said the uncle. "The eldest for the eldest, the second for the second, and so on to the youngest." But the wife of Halfman was the prettiest of them all, and the other brothers were jealous and said to each other, "What, is he who's only get half a man gets the best? Let us put him to death and give his wife to the eldest brother." And they waited for the chance. After they had ridden, in the company of their brides, for some distance, they arrived at a brook, and one of them said, "Now, who will go and fetch water from the brook?" "Halfman is the youngest," said the eldest brother. "He must go." So Halfman got down and filled a water skin. So Halfman got down and filled a skin with water, and they drew it up by a rope and drank. When they had done drinking, Halfman, who was standing in the middle of the stream, called out, "Throw me the rope and draw me up, for I cannot get out alone." And the brothers threw him a rope to drag him up the steep bank. But when he was halfway up, they cut the rope, and he fell back into the stream. Then the brothers rode away as fast as they could, with his bride. Halfman sank down under the water from the force of the fall, but before he touched the bottom, a fish came up to him and said to him,
"Nothing, Halfman. I will help you."
And the fish guided him to a shallow place, so then he could scramble out. And on the way it said to him,
"Do you understand what your brothers whom have saved you from death have done to you?"
"Yes. What am I to do?" said Halfman.
"Take one of my scales," said the fish, And when you find yourself in trouble, throw it into a fire, and I will appear for you.
Thank you, said Halfman, and went his way, while the fish swam its way back home. The country was strange to Halfman, and he wandered about without knowing where he was going, till he suddenly found the ogre standing before him.
Ah, Halfman, I have you at last. You killed my daughters and helped your brothers escape. What do you think I shall do to you?
Whatever you like, said Halfman.
Come into my house then,
Said the ogress, and he followed her.
Look here, she called to her husband. I've got hold of Halfman. I'm going to roast him, so be quick and make up a fire.
So the ogre brought wood and heaped it up till the flames roared up the chimney. Then he turned to his wife and said,
It's all ready. Let us put him on.
What is the hurry, my good ogre? Asked Halfman. You let me in your power. I cannot escape. I'm thin now, but I can hardly make one mouthful. You'd better fatten me up. You will enjoy me much more.
This is a sensible remark, replied the ogre. But what fattens you quickest?
Butter, wine, meats, answered Halfman.
Very good. We will lock you up in this room, and here you will stay until you are ready for eating.
So Halfman was locked into a room, and the ogre and his wife brought him his food. At the end of 3 months, he said to his jailers,
Oh, now I've gotten quite fat. Take me out and kill me.
Get out then, cried the ogre.
But, went on Halfman, you and your wife had better go to invite your friends to the feast, and your daughter can stay in the house and look after me. Yeah, that's a good idea,
they answered. You had better bring the wood in here, continued Halfman, and I shall split it up in small, so that there may be no delay in cooking me. So the ogres gave Halfman a pile of wood and an axe, and then set out with her husband, leaving Halfman and her daughter busy in the house. After he had chopped for a little while, he called to the girl, Oh, come and help me, or else I shan't have it ready for your mother when she gets back. All right, she said, and held a billet of wood for him to chop. But he raised his axe and cut off her head, and ran away like the wind. By and by the ogre and his wife returned and found their daughter lying, without her head, and they began to cry and sob, saying,
Oh, this is Halfman's work. Why did we listen to him?
But Halfman was already far away. When he escaped from the house, he ran on straight on before him for some time, looking for a safe shelter, as he knew the ogre's legs were much longer than his, and that was his only chance. At last he saw an iron tower, which he climbed up. Soon the ogres approached, looking right and left for his prey, should he be sheltering behind a rock or a tree. But he did not know that Halfman would be so near till he heard his voice calling, come up, you can find me here.
But how can I come up? Said the ogre. I see no door, and I cannot possibly climb that tower.
Oh, there is a door, replied Halfman.
And how did you climb up?
A fish carried me on his back.
And what am I to do?
You must go and fetch all your relations and tell them to bring you plenty of sticks, and then you must light a fire and then let it burn till the tower becomes red hot. After that you can easily throw it down.
Very good, said the ogre.
And he went round to every relation he had and told them to collect wood and bring it to the tower where Halfman was. The men did as they were ordered, and soon the tower was glowing like coral. But when they flung themselves against it to overthrow it, they caught themselves on fire and burnt to death. And overheard Halfman laughing heartily, but the ogre's wife was still alive, and she had taken no part of kindling the fire. "Oh!" she shrieked with rage. "You killed my daughters and my husband and all the men belonging to me. How can I get at you with avenge myself?" "Oh, that's easy enough," said Halfman. "I'll let down a rope, and if you tie it around you tightly, I will draw you up." "All right," replied the ogress, fastening the rope which Halfman let down. "Now pull me up." "Are you sure it's secure?" "Oh, yes, quite sure." "Don't be afraid." "Oh, I'm not afraid at all." So Halfman slowly drew her up, but when she was near the top, he let go of the rope, and she fell down and broke her neck. Then Halfman heaved a great sigh and said, "That was hard work. The rope was hurt my hands badly, and now I'm rid of her forever." So Halfman came down the tower and went on, till he got up to the desert palace, and when he was very tired he lay down to sleep. While it was still dark, an ogress passed by, and she woke him and said, "Halfman, tomorrow your brother is to marry your wife." "Oh, how can I stop it?" he said. "Will you help me?" "Yes, I will," replied the ogress. "Oh, thank you, cried Halfman, kissing her on the forehead. "My wife is dearer to me than anything else in the world, and it will not be my brother's fault if I'm not dead long ago." "Very well, I will rid you of him," said the ogress, "but only on one condition. If a boy is born to you, you must give him to me." "No, anything," answered Halfman, "as long as you deliver me from my brother and get me my wife." "Well, mount on my back, then, and in a quarter of an hour we shall be there." The ogress was as good as her word. In a few minutes they arrived at the outskirts of the town where Halfman and his brothers lived. Here she left him, while she went into the town itself, and found the wedding guests just leaving the brothers' house. Unnoticed by anyone, the ogress crept into a curtain, changing herself into a scorpion, and went to the brother who was going to get into bed, and she stung him behind the ear, so that he fell dead where he stood. Then she returned to Halfman and told him to go and claim his bride. He jumped up hastily from his seat and took the road to his father's house, and as he drew near he heard sounds of weeping and lamentations, and he said to a man he met, "What is the matter?" "The judge's eldest son was married yesterday and died suddenly the night before." Suddenly before night. "Well," thought Halfman, "my conscience is clear anyway, for it is quite plain he coveted my wife, and that is why he tried to drown me." He went once to his father's room and found him sitting in tears on the floor. "Dear father," said Halfman, "are you not glad to see me? You weep for my brother, but I am your son too, and he stole my bride from me and tried to drown me in the brook. If he's dead, I at least am alive."
"No, no, he was better than you," moaned the father.
"Why, dear father?"
"He told me you behaved very ill," he said.
"Well, call my brothers," answered Halfman, "as I have a story to tell them." So the father called them all into his presence. Then Halfman began. "After we were 12 days' journey from home, we met an ogress who gave us greeting and said, 'You have been so long coming, and the daughters of your uncle have waited for you in vain.' And she bade us to follow her into the house, saying, 'Now there's no need for more delay. You can carry your cousins as soon as you please, and take them with you to your own home. But I warned my brothers that the man was not our uncle, but an ogre. When we lay down to sleep, she spread a red cloth over us and covered her daughters with a white one. But I changed the cloths. When the ogress came back in the middle of the night, I looked at the cloths, and she mistook her daughters for my brothers, and killed them one by one, all but the youngest. Then I woke my brothers. We all stole softly from the house and rode like the wind to our real uncle. When she saw us, he bade us welcome and married us to his 12 daughters, the eldest, and so on. His bride was the youngest of all, and was also the prettiest. But my brothers were filled with envy and left me to drown in a brook, but I was saved by a fish who showed me how to get out. And now you're a judge. Who did well and who did evil? I or my brothers? Is this story true? Said the father, turning to his sons. It's true, my father, they answered. It is even as Halfman has said, and the girl belongs to him. Then the judge embraced Halfman and said to him, You have done well, my son. Take your bride, and may you both live long and happily together. At the end of the year, Halfman's wife had a son. Not long after, one day hastily came into the room and found her husband weeping. What is the matter? She asked. The matter?
Yes. Why are you weeping?
Because, replied Halfman, the baby is not really ours, but belongs to an ogress.
Are you mad?
Cried the wife. What do you mean talking like that? I promised, said Halfman, when she undertook to kill my brother and to give me to you, that the first son should be hers.
And will she take him from us now?
Said the poor woman. No, not quite yet. When he is bigger.
And is she to have our children?
She asked. No, only this one, replied Halfman. Day by day, the boy grew bigger, and one day, as he was playing in the street with other children, the ogress came by. Go and tell your father, she said, and repeat this speech to him. I want my forfeit, and when I have it.
All right,
replied the child, but when he went home, he forgot all about it. The next day, the ogress came again, and asked the boy what the answer the father was given.
I forgot all about it,
said he. Well, put this ring on your finger, and then you won't forget.
Very well,
replied the boy, and he went home. The next morning, when he was at breakfast, his mother said to him,
Child, where did you get that ring?
A woman gave it to me yesterday, and she told me, Father, to tell you that she wanted her forfeit, and when she was to have it. Then his father burst into tears and said, If she comes again, you must say to her that your parents bid her take her forfeit at once and depart. At this, they both began to weep afresh, and his mother kissed him and put on his new clothes and said, If the woman bids you to follow her, you must go. And the boy did not heed her grief, and he was pleased with his new clothes. And he went out to say with his playfellows,
Look how smart I am, and I'm going away to my aunt to foreign lands.
At that moment, the ogress came up and asked him, Did you give my message, your father and mother?
Yes, dear aunt, I did.
And what did they say?
Take it away at once.
So she took him. But when dinner time came and the boy did not return, his father and mother knew that he would never come back, and they sat down and wept all day. At last Halfman rose and said to his wife, Be comforted, we will wait a year, and when I go to the ogress and see the boy, and know how he is cared for.
Yes, that will be best,
she said. The year passed away. Then Halfman saddled his horse and rode to the place where the ogress had found him sleeping. She was not there, but not knowing what to do next, he got off his horse and waited. About midnight, she suddenly stood before him.
Halfman, why did you come here?
She said.
I have a question to ask.
Well, ask it. But I know quite well what it is. Your wife wishes you to ask whether I should carry off your second son as I did the first.
Yes, that is it,
replied Halfman. Then he seized her hand and said,
Oh, let me see my son, how he looks and what he's doing.
But the ogress was silent, but stuck her staff hard in the earth, and the earth opened, and the boy appeared and said,
Dear father, have you come too?
And his father clasped him by his arms and began to cry, but the boy struggled to be free, saying,
Dear father, put me down. I've got a new mother who's better than the old one, a new father who's better than you.
Then his father sat him down and said, Go in peace, my boy, but listen to me first. Tell your father the ogre and your mother the ogress that never more shall they have any children of mine.
All right,
replied the boy, and called,
Mother! What is it? You're never to take any away my mother and father's children.
Oh, now that I've got you, I don't want any more, she answered.
Then the boy turned to his father and said,
Go in peace, dear father, and give my mother a greeting and tell her not to be anxious any more, for she can keep all her children.
And Halfman mounted his horse and rode home, and told his wife all that he had seen, and the message sent by Mohammed, the son of Halfman, son of the judge. Yeah. That was 16 pages. Now, the girl who pretended to be a boy was 16 pages. That's why it took so long for that one. This one was only 9. The next one is only 5. And after that, 7. There are 3 stories left. Do I want to wait for those for next week? That way we can finish it next week. Because we're almost at 2 hours now. What say you, chat? I don't think the CPU... Why did the CPU just spike up to like 88 and 90? I'm not watching anything extra. Is there any raid suggestions? Anyone? No. Good and read dusk. Have a good night, everyone.
In the quiet of the evening, where shadows softly play, a fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away, with a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams. He waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. He picks up a book, the pages worn and wise, every line